Mark, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Fantastic. I can.
Excellent.
I'm gonna grab a glass of water and then be right back.
All right. Sounds good. Hey, everyone. Thank you for joining the webinar today. Our goal is to talk about Cognos Analytics. It's just 3 o'clock Eastern time now. We'll probably give it another minute or two before we start. And again, thank you everyone for joining. Today, we're going to review Cognos Analytics 12.0, and we're going to probably give it just one more minute. Okay, let's get started. Everybody, thank you for your time today. My name is Martina. I'm a technical resource at TechD. TechD is a platinum IBM business partner, and my goal today is to review Cognos Analytics with you. Hopefully, everybody can see my screen. I'll keep things kind of freeform a little bit. So if anybody has any questions at all, feel free to put it in the chat at any time, and I'll answer it as soon as I can. And I'm also flexible in kind of what direction I go with the product. So just a little bit about us. We're an IBM Platinum business partner, and we deal with pretty much everything data and AI. So ETL work, data warehousing. I personally have been using Cognos for 20 plus years. I think I started at maybe 6.0, 6.5 back in the day, and kind of moved all the way up to now it's Cognos 12. And just some of the products that we deal with. Cloud Pack for Data is a big one. WKC, which is part of Cloud Pack. Cognos Analytics and Planning Analytics. A a lot of chatbot and NLP as well. All right. First of all, let me kind of just start a little bit generic with Cognos. I like to always throw this up here. So if you're using Cognos currently, and I'm not sure what the target audience is here, if people are current Cognos users, potential Cognos users, but you're most likely not on 12.0. It's only been out for 3 weeks, something like that. It came out in early June. So you're probably on something 11 based. Just so you know, there's certain versions that are considered long supported versions in the IBM world. So if you're on 11.17 or 11.24, these are both the last version of the 11.1 and 11.2 series. That's considered a long supported version. So 11.17 support will actually last longer than support for 11.21, 11.22, 11.23. So the last version of each of the dots is the long supported version. I believe there's also 11.0.13 for the .0. But to be very honest, if you're on the .0, you should get off. It's old, years and years and years. It's dated. Everything is better on the newer versions, even if it's supported. If you're up to date in your SNS, just upgrade. It's not that hard. All right, we can help you with it if you need it, but get off the 11.0s. To be honest, the 11.1s at this point are getting pretty old. You should definitely be on 11.2 dot something at this point, or ideally, potentially go to 12. And I'm going to show you some of the features of that in a little bit. All right. I did upgrade an 11 version to 12, and that's where my demo came from for today. It was pretty seamless. I just upgraded everything on top, made sure my configurations were all right, restarted. IBM's put a lot into upgrades to make them easier than they were in the past. And everything's pretty much backwards compatible. So if you have things from 11.0, 11.1, wherever you're coming from, even 10 world, it typically upgrades pretty well. So don't be afraid to go to the latest version. All right, so I'm just listing a couple features of the new version, and then I'll kind of actually show you the product itself. Okay. So one of the big things is the layout. So a big jump between 11.1 and 11.2 was the interface. Massive improvements, and now they've made some more improvements as well. Not as massive of a jump as it was from 11.1 to 11.2, but 12 is still a jump from 11.2. Some of the features, narrative insights. So I kind of took a look and I started playing around with it. And it seems like AI and natural language processing is the big thing. So everybody talks about it now. You've got your ChatGPT, things like that. IBM started adding this pretty heavily to Cognos maybe 2 years ago. And now they're just kind of taking it to the next level, adding more features, more functionality, better feel, better flow. So they're constantly making it so that instead of creating a dashboard, you're just talking through it and the dashboard's just showing up automatically. All right. Collaboration was a big one. So originally they made it so that it would connect with Slack. Now they've added Teams to it as well. So if you create a wonderful dashboard, you want to share it to somebody, typically you would just email them a link. Now you can just throw it onto a Slack feed or Teams feed. All right. That feature did come out at the end of 11.2, but again, they've enhanced it now and they've made it so that the dashboards can go there as well. And again, most of these changes that I've run into have been from the dashboard. So they made it very simple to create dashboards. You can create one off a visualization you like. You can create it off a question that you have. The thing is, it creates a multi-tab dashboard for you in seconds, something that would take me, minutes, maybe even hours, who knows. And then it's a guided self-service experience. So you could literally just log right in and just start asking questions if you wanted to. Now, here's a few features that are not kind of the big highlights, but IBM always kind of highlight a few things that they think are, a great reason to go to the product, blah, blah, blah. I'm more of an old school developer. I'm like, well, what do I like? So I kind of muck around with it a little bit. And these are a couple of the things that I liked a little bit. So one of them was that you can put expressions in your prompt. So if we get away from dashboards and go to the reporting itself, which a lot of people use pretty heavily, and you have a prompt, a date prompt, Your date prompts are typically a prompt that pops up. It shows you the entire calendar. You can go back X amount of years, whatever, select whatever you want and kind of go from there. Now you can actually filter that based on functions that you would typically use in the report itself. So here's an example. I can showcase it when I go into the demo as well. But what they're doing is instead of it having a start date, they're giving it a start date and an end date, but instead of it being hard coded, they're actually doing it based upon, today's date. So the report's running now, based upon now, I want you to go back, 6 days, 2 days, whatever, and just give me a certain set range versus the ability to actually run a report from last month, last year, 5 years ago. So that's a feature that didn't exist before. You can get around, get pretty creative with it. But the fact that they have it, to me, it's a nice to have. The reporting component hasn't changed as much as some of the other components just because it's been around for 20 plus years and they're running out of things to do. It's very well defined, works well, gives you a ton of features for pixel perfect reports. The other one is I'm a big performance person. They've added some local data cache to the dashboards themselves. So a lot of times I would do some type of caching with data sets, but a lot of users don't have data sets. They don't know what a data set is. It's more of an advanced technique. Now they've added built-in caching into the dashboards to make them run faster without actually having to create a data set. So anything involving performance, I'm a big fan of. This URL here, if you want to go to it, it'll actually take you to the what's new page for Cognos 12, and it'll give you all the things that are new. The only issue with that is there are things that are new from 11.2.4, so the latest version prior to this. And so if you're on 11.2.1, 11.2.2, to find out the new feature list, you'd have to see what was different from each version in between. Right? It only tells you what's different from the prior version. So if you're 3 versions back, you have to look at 3 versions of those and kind of combine them together, things like that. Right. That being said, let's take a look at the demo. Let's see. So here we go. So right now I have Cognos 12. I actually put another tab, Cognos 11.2 something, just so you can kind of compare the difference. So this is what it would look like in the 11.2 world. If you're in the 11.1 world, way different. 11.0 world, also way different. More similarities here than there was, between 11.2 and 11.1 or 11.0, but still a lot of changes. All right. So here, when you scroll down, there's a lot of redundancy and things I didn't really need. I don't know if I need to watch a video right away. The tools here in old 11 are pretty much the exact same thing that are here if you create new. So to me, it's a little redundant. Getting started and then recents here. What they've done is they've kind of streamlined it. Now, literally, I can just ask a question right out of the gate, upload content, create something, or there's my recents right there. So they've kind of streamlined it a little bit. Also, asking a question is a big thing now. So everything is like a chat bot. You're not supposed to do anything. Just talk to it, type in your question, and it'll come back with something. So essentially, ask a question here is a big chat bot. Assistant is everywhere. This little button you can find in the reporting side, the dashboarding side, the exploration side, pretty much everywhere. Right. So if I come in here, if you're an 11.2 person, this interface is going to be very similar for you. If you're 11.0 or 11.1 person, it's not, but it's cleaner and it's better. So again, if I want to go to my content, I just click on content. Here I go. My content, team content, samples, pretty straightforward, very simple, easy to use. I created a folder called AAA demo, uploaded a file, worked easy, fast. Under the covers, they usually do some kind of improvement with the engine, but it's not always documented. So I find if you play around with the newer version of Cognos, you'll find a lot of little idiosyncrasies, little tweaks here and there that they made that they never documented because it's kind of a minor tweak, but things can mean a lot to you. And let me just go to my data module. and I'm going to create an exploration, and I apologize if there's some background noise. So this looks kind of the same way it did before. In the older versions, it had exploration. If you go back too far, exploration didn't exist, but I would come in here, I'd find some type of starting point. It'll show me a starting point. It'll give me some information on the side. And then usually if I want to ask a question, it was down here in the left, and it would all be stuck in this little left bar. Well, they've made a lot of changes to that, and I think the changes are actually pretty good. So if I come over here and I click on my assistant, the assistant pops out from the right, and it gives me a lot of different options, talks about different things I can do. Maybe I want to look at quantity or revenue. So if I want to, I can actually just click on this. It'll automatically give me some details. So quantity, how can I compare quantity? Well, maybe compare it versus product line. And it'll automatically just show me a chart based off that. Right. It also gives me a lot of different options. And I'm using a small data set, but I've used small data sets in the past. I feel like the performance here is better than it was prior. So I feel like they've definitely made some changes there. Right. And if I like it, I can take this and I can just add it to a new dashboard. Right. So it's quick, it's easy, it's a great way of kind of creating different charts and graphs just by asking a few questions or making a few clicks. If I come back and I go here again, maybe I want to ask a question, right? And I want to, list product lines by revenue. Not really a question, more of a command, but it works. So all of a sudden it gives me my product lines by revenue. Right? I'm like, well, maybe I can give it a little bit more. So I'm like, well, let's create a dashboard. Based on revenue and country. And amazing or not, it actually creates a dashboard. Right. If you did this in the older version, it won't work. So they're putting in a lot of work on the AI to actually stop you from dragging and dropping. Right. They're making it so that the AI is doing all the work for you. It's all natural language processing. You ask it a couple questions and it just does it. Right. So here's my revenue tab. It's got my different countries here. Different charts, graph, cost versus revenue. And even if it's not exactly what you want, it's a tremendous starting point. And it's pretty much the fastest way you can actually create a dashboard. Right? If there's something about it you'd like, so maybe I don't want the whole thing, but there's a couple charts I like. A great feature is I can click on it. I can pin it. Processing pin. So what that does, it essentially saves this little widget. And then if I ever need it later, I go to my pins on the side and it's right there. And that's for me as a user. So if I go to another dashboard, I can just drag this right over. And I'm like, well, can I do anything a little more complicated? So I went back to exploration again. I came over here. And actually, let's do it from the dashboard itself. All right. So I'm in one of the dashboards. All right. And again, they've added this chatbot to pretty much everything. All right. So this chatbot follows you wherever you go. It just is now. All right. So I said create new dashboard, right, based off revenue and country. So I'm like, well, what if I got a little bit more complicated? Create dashboard based off of, let's see, what did I do? Revenue, country, and year. I'm like, well, it's usually two things you compare. It probably won't work for three. So I gave it a shot, and then, voila. Got revenue, country, and year. If I like it, great. If I don't, I can always tweak it, but it's an excellent starting point. If I look at the front here, it didn't have before. So it's got revenue and it's got my different years. So it's got that as comparison. Countries down here. So it takes that into effect as well and makes everything, adjust everything according. And let's say I like this chart here. I can pin it. A couple seconds later, processing pin, done. So then if I come back over here, I'll have two things pinned that I can just drag right over. So the AI is definitely different than it was before, and it's definitely way more advanced than it was before. Another thing that I had done before, which I thought was pretty interesting, was I don't have to even go into exploration. I can just go to the home screen. All right. And I can do something like create a report showing product, and it gives me suggestions. Product, year, month, and revenue. So I do that, it brings up this interface, and it gives me kind of a nested report. Everything is still dashboard oriented. It won't create like a report studio style report for you. Everything you do will be something that can be pushed to a dashboard. All right, so there's no narratives for this, but if I go to maybe another chart, there will be some. Let's see. There's a chart, looks kind of funky. See if it comes with any insights. This one's a little more complicated, might not have any. But one of the things that's also new is it actually gives you insights based upon whatever you were asking for. And if I like this, I can add it to a new dashboard. I can show related visualizations, create a dashboard from it. So here's my insights. So this product set has the highest average unit price, ranked number 18 in total revenue. So it's actually pretty impressive. So it tells you, it's determining what the average is. It's actually ranking the revenue of this product versus all the other products. And I didn't ask it to do any of those things, but it just did it under the covers. And so now it's giving me all these different types of insights. This never existed in the older version either. Right. So really the biggest things, the biggest standout features are all the different AI things that they're putting into the system. And then if I like this, again, I can always create a new dashboard. I can also share things. In this case, I have a test Slack account. I can email it. But if I had, Microsoft Teams connection, that would show up here as well. I could have multiple connections. I could select whatever I want and then just send this graph to everybody. Or again, the whole theory is this is a fast track to creating a dashboard. So I look at it here, obviously it's a lot more zoomed in, so I can actually see it a lot better. It looks pretty slick. So I kind of like it. And then if I want to add something else to it, I can go to my pins, I can just drag it in. And then again, one of the biggest things that they've done is on their properties, go all the way down to advanced, configure local cache, hit edit. You can auto create a data cache. And now it's created a cache for me based on what's on the dashboard. And so then in theory, things are going to run faster when I save it. So that's a performance enhancement. But the rest of it is everything seems to be going in the direction of, NLP. Type in a question and just have it do things. And it's all dashboard related. So before, you could ask it a question and it'll give you like a chart and that was it. And then you can take a look at the chart, create a dashboard. Now I can be like, all right, create a dashboard. Base that dashboard off this, go. And now it's done. Okay. So this is definitely their emphasis, is definitely where they're going with it. Right. I can also show you an example of let's go over here of some of the tweaks and reports. Create report, a blank one, list, sure. If I drag a few things over. This is all pretty much the same. They made it easier to get the variables, I believe. So this is the top, it's kind of your breadcrumbs. I'm in a page. If I want to go to the report, I get the parameters and variables. All those things are in here, and it's very simple to do. I believe that was a more recent tweak as well. And there's so many features in here, it's hard to kind of like find everything that just shows up, but that was definitely a big one. If I want to share here, this has changed as well. Email and Slack is now available everywhere. I can also send a link to it, assuming I save it, which I should probably do right now. Save as. One. Then if I click share, gives me my link option. So I can just send this link to somebody and then out the door it goes. And of course, the reports, I can always save it, schedule it, email it that way, and things like that as well. But from inside there, it's something that you can do, which you couldn't do before. All right. Now going back to the prompts. So if I go to my pages here, go up another level to prompt pages, and let me just create a new one. And just from a test point of view, if I come in here under prompting, I can do like a date prompt. So here's my date prompt. Typically, if I run a date prompt, it's going to give me the option of, picking a start date or an end date, whenever I decide to make this. In this case, it's just going to be one date. So I can pick any date I want. The whole world's available to me. So I can go back a week, a month, a year. Some people don't want to do that, but they also don't want to hard code anything. Right? So I close out of here, I go back here. Well, what I can do now is first date source, last date source. So it's essentially a range, start range, end range. All right. Right now it's a text, which is what was available before, but I could switch it to an expression. Oh. So from text, I go expression, and now I can do a report expression, which allows me to do pretty much any function I have available to me. So anything I can create, if, this, that, whatever, I can add all that in there. I actually have a couple pre-saved. So rather than type them all in, I'm going to do a little cut and paste. So I've got date add for report date, minus the day of the week. Validate, no errors. And I've got a second one here. That's this guy out, hit OK. Now, if I run the exact same report, it locks me in. So I can't select something from a month ago, a year ago. I'm locked in. All I have is the 26th to the 30th available to me for my start date. So whatever this prompt is, these are the only values that are going to be an option now. And this is dynamic. So next week, it'll give me certain dates in July. So that's the big thing. It's a new way of creating a dynamic prompt that's easy, simple to do. Before, your dynamic prompts were more like dynamic filters. The prompt itself was usually not that dynamic, or if it was, it had to be some kind of query that you're using. And they were still it was just hard. It's just way easier now. It's cleaner, it's simpler. All right. Now, if we go over here, let's say we go into manage. If we look at admin console, this is still exactly what it was before. No changes. All right. So no real learning curve here. But if you look at some of the other things, they're definitely adding more features, more functionality. So the goal here is to have these newer features replace everything that's in here. And then one day this will just disappear. But it's, it's taking time. But one of the things that you need to know is, data server connections are very important. Some people don't realize this, but if you don't have a data server connection, certain features won't work because they only see data sources that were created here. And if I create a data source here, that data source is automatically available here. So it'll automatically create it there. All right. So you don't have to create anything here anymore. And if you have things here, to be honest, you should, save whatever the settings are, delete it, create it in the front, and have it auto create it back here. This way you can use all the new features and functionality. Let's see. Storage, it's a great one. If you want to use some type of object store, S3, IBM Cloud Object Store, or just a generic one you can plug in. So you can actually save things down instead of saving them to a file folder, you can save them in the cloud to an object store. Always like that feature. Let's see. Collaboration is where you would end up configuring your connection to either Teams or Slack. You can have multiple connections. So then you can schedule reports to just go right to Teams, right to Slack, or you can just do it using that share option. That's actually done here as administrator. Multi-tenancies, if you have different groups on the same system and you want them divided up. Customization is your kind of look and feel. If you don't know, you can customize the front end completely. You can get rid of IBM Cognos Analytics, put your own words there, change the different coloring, and totally, customize it to your needs. These things are mostly the same. That's if you want to do a backup. That's about the same. Activities. This is the same as it was before. No real changes here. License manager tells you how many licenses you're actively using. And then people is pretty much unchanged as well. So the biggest changes I would say from 11 to 12, just kind of reiterate, is the interface is different. Not crazy different, but I think it's a little cleaner, it's a little better. And the emphasis is now completely going with natural language processing. So they've made it so in the top right, you always have that assistant option. And now if you click on it, it'll bring you into here right away. Or if you don't want to do that, you're at the home screen. It's automatically going to go, show me insights, show whatever, create dashboard. And it takes me to this screen. It gives me the option to create a dashboard. So it just creates one generically now. And it defaults to your last package that you've used, but you can also set a default package too if you want. So when it does that, if they've got 10 different data modules, you'll know which one it's actually using. But if you want to change it, you can do that as well. I did see that in here. So if I came in here, yep. So it's using my sample data module, but if I want, I can change it and select something new by going through my folder system. So it only picks one data module at a time. It's not going to scan through everything you had. If I remember correctly, in 11.1, 11.2, it would, when you would type something in, it would potentially query everything you had access to. And now it's stripped down to the one data module that you've selected. And they also found some matching sources. So it'll actually give you suggestions for some other data if you want. So this was my source for my data module. So that's definitely coming up. And these two probably have a lot of similarities. So that's the direction that IBM's going. Cleaner interface, but mostly all the AI stuff built in. So dashboards, to make it simple, nobody's going to have to drag and drop, though obviously you can. It's still easy enough to do, but their whole goal is to just have you ask questions, gain insight on your data by asking questions. Then if you like the insight, take that chart, that graph, or just that insight in general and create an entire dashboard out of it. So they're turbocharging the dashboards with AI technologies, essentially where they're going with it. So I think that covers most of the things that are new and interesting in 12. Again, if you want to go to the website, not it. Let's give you a list of all the different features that have come out with Cognos 12, so you can kind of dive in. I went through them and I kind of picked out the ones that meant the most. I mean, yeah, the samples are better, great. A few more tweaks in the admin tool, okay. But I picked out the things that were standouts for me. But if you want to see everything, you can go in here. And then again, let's say if you're coming from 11.1, well, the 12 is going to show you everything from 11.2 up. So you'd have to go to 2 first. And then from there, you'd have to kind of, keep bouncing. So I think that's it. Was there any questions? Anybody had questions about installation, configuration, upgrades, any new features? All right. Well, if that's it, I think that's all I really have to cover. If you're going from 11.2.4, I mean, that's going to be your biggest difference is all the AI that's built in. If you're a few versions back, a lot. If you're on 11.1 anything, I recommend you upgrade. If you're on 11.0 anything, I almost demand that you upgrade because the product is night and day. And now they're adding all the fancy AI that everybody's talking about and seeing. So it's pretty slick. I recommend everybody try it out. So thank you for your time. And if there's any questions, please feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Mark, as always, very insightful. We will we'll also be posting the recording of the webinar. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.